Hi, and welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore, founder of foodtrucktraining.group. Our topic today is fire safety. The National Fire Prevention Association Model Code is a standard for most local fire departments across the United States. Whether your area has adopted the most recent code or not is no excuse to ignore basic safety. 5 years ago, trucks weren't even mentioned in the model code, but thanks to an explosion of growth in the food truck industry and then literal explosions of several food trucks across the United States, a whole section just on food trucks was added. It's only a matter of time before the vendors that opted for cheap rather than safe will be out of business either from a fire or losing their license because they don't update their equipment requirements. So I'm going to give you 7 fire safety tips for a food truck. Number 1, schedule regular self-inspections and maintenance of the electrical equipment and keep an eye out for hazards, like frayed wires or having combustible items near power sources. You also want to check your propane lines and the connections for leaks. Remember, every time you're moving your truck or trailer, those lines are getting a little bit of a vibration in them, and that vibration will help to loosen connections. So you want to be checking for leaks daily. You want to check the electrical stuff weekly, because having a frayed wire means you're probably going to lose that particular piece of equipment for the day, and it makes more sense for you to replace frayed wires as you discover them rather than discovering them after the piece of equipment doesn't work. You want to train your employees on the proper use of fire extinguishers and when to use the Class K versus when to use the Class ABC. Training them on the dangers of pouring water on a grease fire is super important, because the common thing is we'll just pour water on a fire, but when you pour water on a grease fire, it helps it to spread even more. So you have to train your employees and don't expect them to just know this information. You have to train them. You want to follow the regulations when it comes to testing your fire extinguishers, because they have to be certified every year to make sure they function properly. And then your propane tanks. A lot of people don't realize that propane tanks actually have an expiration date stamp on them. Once that expiration date goes past, they have to either have it recertified or retire that particular tank and buy a new tank. So anybody that's had their business or has bought a used business needs to look and see how old the tanks really are. You want to regularly inspect the kitchen hood system. You're looking for grease buildup. In a truck, for instance, there's more to the hood system than just what you see, the filters and the actual sides. Once you pull the filters, and you should do that every night to clean them, you'll see a stack that leads up to the roof of your trailer. And then on top of that stack, there'll be some type of enclosure to help dissipate the grease as it's pulled up out of your truck. A lot of the grease will cling to any place where it has to change direction. So every time there's even a slight angle, that gives the grease an opportunity to collect there. You want to look for grease buildup and clean into the stack, into the roof area, because if that does catch fire, if your fryers catch fire and it spreads to an accumulation of grease in the stack, now you've got fire that's going to spread to the roof and it's going to burn down the entire trailer. You want to clean up the grease at least once a day. You're concentrating on the walls, the work surfaces, the ranges, the fryers, the broiler, the grills, the convection oven, vents, filters, anything you've got that's going to collect grease. You want to wipe it down, get it clean. But again, pay extra attention to the exhaust hood itself, because there's a lot more grease buildup there than people realize. And a grease buildup will also restrict airflow, which means your hood system ends up working harder. Number 4, you want to keep the food truck neat as possible. That helps to reduce fire hazards. You want to keep paper products, linens, boxes, and food away from heat and cooking sources, unless, of course, that's the food you're cooking. You want to properly dispose of any soiled towels, trash, cardboard boxes. You want to get them out as quickly as possible, because any of those things laying around, if it catches on fire, it's just one more fuel source for the fire that you won't be able to control. If you have wood or coal burning ovens, you want to remove the ash daily. This is step number 5 or tip number 5. And I recommend that you want to pull it out probably per meal period, because the ashes insulate and make your ovens less efficient. Number 6, all employees should know how to shut off the propane as well as shut off the generator, or how to unplug if you're plugged into shore power, just in case of an emergency. You want to ensure that everybody on your staff knows the locations for exits on the truck or trailer. You want them to know how to safely exit your vehicle. Number 7, store flammable liquids in the original containers and make sure it's tightly sealed so there's no spills. Food truck kitchens are small. We all know that, but you have to do your best to store your liquid cleaning supplies and that type of thing in well-ventilated areas and away from combustion sources. And the health department wants you to store it away from your food. So it limits you on where you can store it, but you want to make sure that it is stored as safely as possible and definitely away from anything that's going to generate heat. One of the biggest problems that I see a lot of food truck owners do is they will take their gallon of cleaner and a gallon of bleach and they'll store it underneath their triple sink right beside either the hot water tank or the on-demand hot water. So now you got it right beside a heat source. So you need to treat the hot water tank or the on-demand hot water tank just like a restaurant would treat it, and nothing should be stored within a certain number of inches. Some areas it's 3 feet, some areas it's only 2. But you want to make sure that nothing is near that could melt, catch on fire, set those chemicals on fire, and then you got a issue to deal with. And you also want to make sure that you never mix chemicals unless it's specifically required by what the manufacturer says. I mean, we all know not to mix bleach with window cleaner because most window cleaners are ammonia based. And if you didn't know that, you just learned something. But don't mix chemicals unless it specifically says you're allowed to do so, because you definitely don't want to pass out or asphyxiate yourself. So the bottom line is follow these tips. Make sure that you stay abreast of your area's fire codes, because if they haven't already changed, they are going to very, very soon, as more and more legislatures are writing their laws in such a way that they don't have to vote on new changes. They just automatically adopt the new changes. So that's going to speed up the process, not only on the fire prevention side, but also on the food codes as well, because more and more states are able to adopt something the same year that it changes. That's going to make our jobs a little bit more difficult because we got to stay abreast of those kind of things. But a responsible business owner does that anyway. Thank you guys so much for listening. I certainly hope you're finding the information useful for your food truck business. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider hitting the support button or hit one of the links in the description and offer any kind of support you possibly can. Every little bit does help. If you guys love being around like-minded, positive people, join our Facebook group. It's called Food Truck Training. There you're going to find a ton of information and support for some awesome members. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great day, and I'll be back tomorrow with another topic.